We're in a place where rational persuasion is almost impossible. You're not going to get persuaded if you're in the meat industry or the cattle grazing industry.
My question is whether or not it's possible for us to move away from human-centered morality. I think a lot of people, Peter, from speaking to students a lot of the time who all study your work, they say, I buy Peter's arguments on this, but I can't quite bring it about that I move away from my own desires and ends. Like, bacon tastes too good, as you often hear them say. So, like, do you think that it's possible for us to have this big cultural shift away from a human-centered morality? How optimistic are you of that mindset change?
Look, I certainly think that it's possible, because there are a lot of people who tell me that, yes, and in fact, I'm like this myself. I grew up in Australia where meat was good and cheap at that time. And in fact, when I got a scholarship to go to Oxford, people said, oh, Oxford is great, but the meat in England is really terrible and expensive too. And for about a year, I was still eating it before I recognized what we're doing to animals and changed. So yeah, I was enjoying it, and it did take an adjustment to get used to not eating it. But pretty soon I was fine with that and enjoying it. But I know other people who've said the same, and then there are some people who say, as you said, oh yeah, I agree with your arguments, but I just love my steak too much. So, given that it's possible for humans to make that shift, then you couldn't say that it's impossible. But given that not everybody does it, even when they accept the arguments, you'd have to say that it's difficult, and whether we will get to the point of convincing the majority that morality extends to non-human animals, and that the way that we treat animals, especially in industrial agriculture, in factory farms, is an abomination that we should not participate in. I don't really know, and it may be that we have to make those decisions easier to act on by providing the kinds of meat that people are used to eating and that they're used to cooking, either from plant-based ingredients or from cellular meat produced without going through any animal, just grown at the cellular level. Some people think that we need that to make it easier to make the transition. I can't really say for sure. I think it's an option. I'm still hopeful that we will get there simply through persuasive argument, but I can't say that I'm confident that will happen.
Well, I saw at the corner of my eye Nancy nodding in agreement, but I would have thought, for the Stoic perspective, Peter's idea that you can sort of flatten out morality to pleasure, happiness, suffering and pain, and just deal with the calculus in these terms. I imagine the Stoics not happy to reduce morality to these four, let's say, concepts.
Well, they wouldn't be utilitarians, but on the other hand, they certainly would go for Peter's idea of self-persuasion, athletic self-discipline, if that's, that is a core Stoic idea, and that's part of the appeal, that you can do it with enough grit, that sort of thing. But I would agree that external incentives or an easier environment would make it reasonable. I think you ended your comments on the note of persuasion, rational persuasion. We're in a place where rational persuasion is almost impossible because we're in affirmation, confirmation bias bubbles. You're not going to get persuaded if you're in the meat industry or the cattle grazing industry. And so actually the reverse is now the case. My husband and I were talking, and DeSantis, a governor of Florida, has sanctioned, he has said he will not permit broadcasters who do meteorological reports to mention climate change. So, there's actually censorship and punishment going on because, there was one thought we had about, will we sacrifice, the gods sacrifice us to change the climate? Well, I think, if the fossil industry might sacrifice the climate people and enjoy it all. I will say one thing we haven't talked about at all, and that just is, we all have cell phones here we're operating on that, they mine They need lithium batteries. Lithium batteries are very destructive of the environment in Africa. And that's not going to change. So I don't think in that regard, or AI or Bitcoin, these are highly, highly climate sucking devices. So that's a tough one.
Slavoj, let's bring you back in here. Sorry to keep quoting yourself back to you've said in the past that you described vegetarians in a talk recently as degenerates.
Maybe that's more praise.
I wonder again, is that more praise, or do you disagree that that's the goal for the effort?
And I mean it literally. Listen, isn't human sexuality by definition in some fundamental sense degenerate? Because it's against generation. Sorry, I never understood Catholic Church when they say the ultimate goal of sexual act should be giving birth. Sorry, animals are doing like this. We humans have something that we call love passion, which is much more spiritual, where it's ridiculous to say, honey, we may enjoy it, but remember, we really are doing it for a child. In this sense, again, degenerate is for me a good term, but more seriously, one notion of morality. Here, I hope we will all see. Morality is for me very ambiguous term. Yes, of course, I'm not a postmodern relativist and all this bullshit, every culture, blah, blah, has its own. But are you aware how many horrible things were and are happening on account of morality? For example, and I'm a leftist, look at Holodomor and collectivization of farms early 30s in Soviet Union. It was presented to the people as the highest moral duty, ethico-political. People who were sent to the farms to convince with pressure. Farmers were told, if you feel any compassion for them, this means you are a small bourgeois. Good. Second thing, Peter made a statement, outrageous, half criminal, which means with which I totally agree. He said somewhere something so beautiful about how people are mostly criminal, egotistic, and so on. You know that Peter Reuben, I think, I don't know, okay, some Latino-American philosopher, put this nicely when he imitated this phrase, irrespective of race, sex, religion, we have certain rights. His word is irrespective of sex, ethnic identity, religion, and so on. We are all evil, egotists, and brutal, and so on. I think this is the zero level. So I will end up soon. What to do? Would the two of you agree? Precisely because we people may be or may convince ourselves that are rational, but are not ready, as you nicely said. Yeah, I'm for animal rights, but don't disturb me while I'm eating my nice juicy steak. You know what maybe works? It's very naive. What about, here comes my Stalinist side, a well-organized, global as possible state propaganda where you simply inform people, but this should be put at the prime time on TV. For example, you eat pork, pigs, but are people aware of the horror reality of the daily lives of pigs grown to be slaughtered, who are half blind, cannot even walk? The same goes with chicken. Or my favorite terrifying example, maybe you know the name, isn't now some special coffee made mostly in Indonesia? Some apes, I don't know the name, are compelled, forced to eat, it's literally we eat sheep, to eat coffee beans, and then sheep, becoming part of sheep, made them to taste, don't ask me why, excellently. People can be convinced with good disgusting examples. I will give you an example. Me, myself, spontaneously, I'm a filthy liberal. I'm for human rights. That's why, as far as I go, I don't like to eat parts of the body of an animal where it's clearly where it comes from.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.